Good morning, everyone. On behalf of ASSEDEL, thank you very much. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to the European Parliament for today's panel discussion, Security with Values, Defending Human Rights Through European Union Missions. I'm Cristian Plasencia and I will moderate this panel. First and foremost, I would like to thank all of our distinguished speakers and participants for joining us today. Your presence demonstrates that this discussion surrounding security, democracy and human rights remains not only relevant, but essential for the future of Europe and its role in the world. I would also like to express the sincere gratitude to...
Sorry. No, I'm stuck.
Okay. Our sincere gratitude to Aikaterini Vieira and the Greens EFA Parliamentary Group for the collaboration and support in making this event possible. Partnerships between civil society and political institutions are fundamental to strengthening democratic participation and ensuring that important debates reach beyond institutional walls. Before introducing to this discussion, please allow me to briefly present ASSEDEL and what do we work for. ASSEDEL is a non-governmental organization based in Strasbourg and founded in 2020 with the mission of promoting and defending human rights and fundamental freedoms in the spirit of the European Convention on Human Rights. At the same time, we seek to serve as a bridge between politics and civil society. We believe that democratic institutions are stronger when citizens are informed, engaged, and able to participate in public debate. I also like to acknowledge the ASSEDEL team, whose commitment and hard work have made today's event possible. Through our work, we aim to bring European policy making closer to citizens by promoting dialogue between civil society, experts, and policymakers. Our objective is simple: to create spaces where ideas can exchange constructively and where citizens can engage with the challenges facing Europe. This brings us to today's topic. As the topic is saying, Security with Values, Defending Human Rights Through European Union Missions, reflects a question that is increasingly central to European policymaking. Across Europe and beyond, we face a rapidly changing security environment. Armed conflicts, geopolitical tensions, hybrid threats, cyber attacks, disinformation campaigns, migration challenges, and humanitarian crises all become defining features of our contemporary landscape. In response, governments and institutions count upon to strengthen security and resilience. Yet, an important question remains. How do we ensure that security measures remain fully compatible with the values upon which the European Union was built? Security and human rights are not opposing objectives. They are mutually reinforcing, and any sustainable security policy must be built up on respect for human dignity, fundamental freedoms, and the rule of law. This panel has three main objectives. The first, to explore how the European Union can ensure that security and human rights remain fully compatible with its external action. Second, to foster a clear public understanding of European missions and operations, including the safeguard that clear public understanding of missions and operations. Including the safeguard that ensure the respect for human rights in the field. And third, the third objective is to bring these discussions closer to citizens, encouraging greater public engagement with European policy and the role of the EU as a global actor. At a time of growing international challenges, the European Union has the potential to play a unique role in promoting peace, stability, and support vulnerable regions. Today's discussion offers an opportunity to reflect how that role can be strengthened while remaining faithful to the values that define the European project. We are honored to welcome Aikaterini Vieira, a member of the European Parliament and member of several parliamentary delegations, including the Subcommittee on Human Rights, whose work contributes significantly to today's discussion. We are equally pleased to welcome Professor Aikaterini Angelaki, Doctor of Law and Professor at the University Paris Riehl, whose expertise in the European law and external action will help us better understand the legal framework governing European missions abroad. We are also delighted to welcome Professor David Rodriguez, Doctor of Human Rights and Professor at the University of Deusto and former member of the Colombian Army. His unique professional experience offers valuable insight into the evolving nature of security challenges and the practical realities of security policy. We are also welcome to honor Nela Riehl, Chair of the Committee on Culture and Education and a member of the Committee on Foreign Affairs, whose work highlights the importance of linking security discussions with broader questions of democratic values, education, and civic engagement. The structure of today's event is straightforward. We will begin right now with opening remarks from Aikaterini Vieira. Later, we will continue with Nela Riehl perspective on the relationship between European values, democratic participation, and security policy. Later, we will continue with Professor Angelaki on the legal dimension of European missions abroad, followed by the Professor David Rodriguez, who will address the evolution of the European security concerns and the current policy agenda. After all these interventions, my colleague over here, Sara Marchis, will moderate the question and answer session, and my colleague over there, Imen, will finish with the final conclusions of this debate. Having said this, once again, thank you very much for joining us today. I give immediately the floor to Aikaterini Vieira.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for the introduction. I will still repeat because sometimes it's always good to say. My name is Aikaterini Vieira. I'm a member of the European Parliament for the Greens Group and the Greens coordinator on the Human Rights Subcommittee. And it's really a big pleasure to be here today because I like talking about important issues, learning about important issues, and I like doing it even more if I can do it with really nice people, and I think that's the case today. So I wanted to start by saying that this is my second event with ASSEDEL that we have here in the European Parliament, and I really want to express my appreciation to all of you who really make this happen, put it together, bring an amazing panel of experts, and put on the agenda these topics that are so important to discuss in link with human rights. So thank you all for coming here and for organizing this with us. And also shout out to Nela, who's such a nice colleague to work alongside, who is a great member of the Foreign Affairs Committee, who's been fighting for human rights since day one. And I'm very curious, I don't know our panel, I don't know our two professors, but I'm sure that we will get a lot of insights and a lot of knowledge that we need to also be better policymakers. And that's back to what you said about being the link between civil society, politicians, but also academia. I think that's such an important role that organizations like yours play. I won't take too long. I mean, maybe to say that our previous event was about trade and human rights, and this one is about security and human rights. And I think it's really interesting because trade and defense have been two of the big topics of this mandate since I've been elected in 2024. And I think it's really important that as these debates take place in our politics, in the member states, in the European Union, in our newspapers day to day, it's also really important that we ask the question, how does this link to our core values and the things we believe in and the defense and promotion of human rights through our foreign policy, even if we're talking, and especially if we're talking about security and defense. I'm very curious to hear from our panel of experts about the fact or how they see the bringing together of security and promotion of human rights, democracy, and rule of law as EU core values. And of course, I mean, a starting point is that every EU mission, civilian or military, must be accountable, transparent, and centered on the protection of people. Personally, and I think maybe others will also elaborate on this, it's also important to look at a more holistic view of what security means, and that also means looking at root causes of conflicts. So inequality, injustice, erosion of human rights. We cannot separate military solutions from seeking long-lasting peace. And I'm very curious to learn about the topic today, to security with values. And with that, I think the best thing we can do is kick off the panel. We'll have an also opportunity, like you said, to discuss and to have some Q&A in the end. And once again, thank you for bringing this event together.
Thank you very much, Ms. Catarina. I think that maybe we can move immediately to Nela. I give you the floor right now. And Inigo, if you can put the questions that we have saved for Nela. I think we can start with the first one, if you don't mind. As the international order is changing rapidly, what role should the European Union play in promoting security, stability, and cooperation around the world?
But also, of course, like first start with a brief thank you, not thank you. Thank you, first of all, also again to Catarina for really hosting this today, really, because I know it's super important to open up the Parliament for such discussions, right? No, usually we're like behind closed doors. So I really appreciate you and you to actually have this discussion today. I do have to admit that I will be leaving in a couple of minutes, so I won't be able to stay here. That I'm very sorry about. But regarding the question, of course, I want to start by saying something that we sometimes avoid saying. We as Europe tend to, kind of lay back and be like, there is the international world order and we will do anything we can to uphold it, but then we don't follow up with actions on that. Where we avoid to actually say that right now more needs to be done. I feel like we're actually shying away from that. Like we have, Russia's aggression, we have China's rise in systemic rival. We have the United States, of course, who are not a reliable partner anymore. So there are structural changes that we now need to, kind of handle. And the question is, what is actually Europe's role in this? So, I'd like to again reiterate that there's a temptation to say we will always be the one upholding multilateralism. And of course, I want to reassure, yes, we will. But we have to also admit that the world has changed. So faster and even more fundamentally than any of us, I think, would have predicted a few years ago. So we as institutions also need to kind of catch up with this very fast change that we see right now. We have spent far too long time assuming that conditions will, allow to prosper, like American security guarantees we saw so far, or also, open global trade, something like that. That's all not a given anymore. So we really need to step in now to fill those gaps, dare to fill those gaps, so to speak. Get back on our own feet, if you like to put it that way. Also, we need to invest in self-resilience. We need to invest in independence when it comes to energy, for example, technology, of course. So there's a lot of areas that we do need to be more brave in, I would say. We also need to improve the way we approach global corporations. When we look to the countries of the south, of the poorer countries, we do need to make sure that they see us as a partner. And that requires from us to kind of change also our approach in how we approach them. So that's kind of a mind change, I would say we need to see here, and then also another mind change we need to have is that security, of course, is not only about defense. It means so much more. As a chair of the Commission on Culture and Education, of course, I always want to also make that link, that it also means investing in education, also means investing in culture, and that, of course, is something not so popular to put money in there, but I'll be fighting for it.
Okay, I think. Okay, thank you very much for this first statement. Actually, we are playing a very crucial role. I mean, Europe is facing right now a crucial moment where they need to advance and find the other alternatives. I think that if you don't mind, Inigo, we can switch again to the second question. I think we can target it on how now that you have mentioned education, how can education and media literacy help citizens to better understand the European Union's foreign policy and encourage greater public engagement with the European Union's action abroad? Because if I understand, unfortunately, as you have said, sometimes they are not very engaged or very informed about this aspect of the European Union.
Yeah. That is very true, and if I may start with something personal, I've been a teacher, or was a teacher before becoming a member of the Parliament 2 years ago. Right now, this very day, 2 years ago, I was still like teaching in my classroom. And what I noticed there is that there's a difference in providing information to students or providing like tools to students, because information can be manipulated. And if we just, so we really need to make this switch into providing tools or to students that they can themselves evaluate information. I think that's what it's all about, and that's getting even more important now with the rise of AI. Personally, I don't believe that speaking for Germany, that our education system is ready for that. We're lagging behind. We're very slow. So this is also something. That's why I meant like investments need to come a step in right now. First thing I believe we need to do when it comes to education is that we need to recognize that media literacy is now kind of like a civic survival skill, if you want to put it that way, really, and we don't have it right now. So we teach, of course, young people how to read, and then they read information. We teach young people how to do math, but we don't teach them really how to think critically, and that's where we need to be right now. That's where we need to get. So the long-term answer here is, of course, that citizens who can be easily manipulated if we don't invest in that. So the second thing then is that we actually need to close the gap between what Europe does in the world on the one hand, but also what people understand and what they see, because as the question points out, people in the European Union sometimes tend to not really understand what we're doing. And that's what I mentioned, right? Catarina now opens the parliament for us to discuss, and we need to have these discussions even more, because I do feel that we sometimes here don't really engage with citizens anymore. And here we really have to find a way to engage with citizens here, but also with citizens around the world to explain and to actually know and feel what's needed on the ground. And the third thing then, and this is also where I kind of feel most strongly, is that, and I mentioned also before, these AI challenges, we really need to take them seriously, and we really need to invest there now, because that's going to change the world completely, and the education system is not ready for that. Teachers are not ready for that. Teachers, or I think the whole society sometimes also is not really willing to admit that what we have like the existing frameworks also we put up as a European Union, they're good, but they are not enough. We need to, continue improving. We need to go further. So it does require from the entire society kind of the will to move and a will to change. But that's always uncomfortable. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your contribution, Nela. I guess that then this is not just an individual action, but a total engagement of the whole society to approach to this deal. I think that maybe now we can switch for the following speaker. Here we have Miss Angelaki, as I mentioned, teacher and professor. No, sorry, Doctor of Human Rights and Professor.
I'm the teacher.
So sometimes I'm confused. And Professor of Human Rights and Doctor of Human Rights and Professor at the University of Riehl. I think that without further moment, we can start with the first question, if you don't mind, Inigo. It's about what legal mechanisms are currently available to ensure effective judicial protection and to uphold the principle of rule of law in the context of the European Union Common Security and Defence Policy missions.
Thank you. Thank you very much, first of all, for the invitation and for your warm welcome today. So I will try to approach your question from an EU law perspective, focusing on the mechanisms that exist within the EU legal framework. And I will not focus on the possibility to turn to international courts or tribunals. This is also difficult, to turn to international courts or tribunals in the field of EU missions and operations. So I have also prepared some slides, hoping not to become too technical here, but I think that it will be more easy maybe to follow legal information and references to case law. So as regards this question, let me start first of all with an important remark, and maybe we can switch to the first slide. EU missions do not operate in a kind of legal vacuum. They are developed within the framework of common security and defense policy, which is an integral part of common foreign and security policy, which itself is a part of EU external action. And so under the treaties, EU external action shall be guided by democracy, human rights, and rule of law. The Charter of Fundamental Rights also binds EU institutions and bodies when they act in this field. So this means that the Union has a mandate to promote the rule of law externally, including through the EU missions, while at the same time being required to respect the same principle in the exercise of its own powers. At the same time, however, we all know that the common foreign and security policy retains specific features inherited from the former intergovernmental pillar, second pillar. And so this brings me to the second slide on these specific features that still exist in the treaties. So in principle, even today, the Court of Justice of the EU has no jurisdiction in this policy area, subject, of course, to exceptions provided by the treaties. And this creates a kind of structural tension, because on the one side, we have a policy that is now integrated into the EU constitutional framework, but on the other side, this policy remains only partially subject to the ordinary system of judicial review established by the treaties. And this was one of the obstacles to the accession to the European Convention of Human Rights. It was identified by the court back in Opinion 213 of 2014. You have the excerpt on the slide. And it may also give the impression of a kind of an accountability gap in the common foreign and security policy. And this is particularly visible in the field of EU missions, where the rights of individuals may be affected, sometimes in a very sensitive context, such as maritime operations in the Mediterranean or post-conflict situations. That said, this does not mean that the Court of Justice of the EU has no role to play in this field. Over the last decade, the Court has interpreted narrowly the exclusion of its jurisdiction. And this brings me to the next slide, so if we may switch. So actually, the Court has treated the exclusion of its jurisdiction as a derogation from the Court's general mandate to ensure compliance with EU law. And this has led the Court to accept jurisdiction in litigation generated by the EU missions. We have a list of the relevant cases on the screen. So we have cases concerning access to documents, agreements concluded with third countries, public procurement, or even staff management. And the culmination of this line of case law can be found in a judgment of 2024, the so-called KSKD judgment, a very important judgment. If we may switch to the next slide to see the reference of this judgment, it will be helpful. I have introduced. Inigo, sorry, can you change the title? Don't get overwhelmed from the information that you have on the screen. I have introduced this information because this is a very important judgment. This case arose in the context of EU Lex Kosovo. This is the largest EU civilian mission. And here the applicants did not seek annulment of just a decision on staff management. They brought an action for damages for the Union's alleged failure to act effectively in response to serious violations of fundamental rights, including the disappearance, torture, and killing of members of their families. So in this judgment, the Court accepted to review and interpret acts not directly linked to political or strategic choices in the context of common foreign and security policies. This is the excerpt that you have on the screen that it is about. And this is a very important step because it brings within judicial reach a substantial part of the conduct of EU missions, and it may facilitate accession to the European Convention on Human Rights. But the court also maintained in the judgment that acts directly linked to political or strategic choices remain outside its jurisdiction. So that's for the access to the Union courts. Then access to the Union courts is not the only mechanism available. In certain circumstances, individuals may bring claims before domestic courts, especially where the conduct of member states' authorities is involved. And so this brings me to the next slide. So what can be done beyond the EU courts? First of all, we can bring a claim before the domestic courts. And we can also identify a number of complementary accountability mechanisms. These include, for example, the European Ombudsman, which may investigate allegations of maladministration in connection with the EU missions. And this has been done in the past. In late 2023, for instance, the Ombudsman addressed the decision to the European External Action Service on behalf of EU civil missions. And we have also mission-specific tools. Most missions are accompanied by status agreements concluded between the Union and the host state. And these status agreements may establish accountability mechanisms. Specific bodies may also be created in connection with a particular mission. And here the most significant example is the Human Rights Review Panel, established within EU-Lex Kosovo, to which individuals may bring complaints. In the KD judgment that I mentioned before, the applicants had brought such a complaint before turning to the Union courts. So, to answer your question, accountability mechanisms do exist in the field of EU missions. The real question, however, is whether these mechanisms always provide effective remedies in practice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Indeed, at least we know that there already exist the measures of accountability. However, it's good to know that we need to improve and develop them. And I think that maybe it's the best moment to switch for the following question, that is targeting to what are the main legal and practical challenges faced by individuals seeking judicial protection and accountability for alleged human rights violations arising from the European Union Common Security Defence Policy missions. This is what happens in case that we indeed find, unfortunately, a violation of human rights.
Thank you again for the question. It's a difficult question.
Sorry if I was too cold.
So, one of the main challenges faced by individuals, I would identify, let's say, three challenges, three difficulties. They are interconnected somehow. So the first difficulty, for me it's the most important one, is the attribution of responsibility for the unlawful conduct. Why this difficulty? Actually, EU missions are complex operational structures. Okay, they involve EU institutions and bodies, the Council, the Political and Security Committee, the High Representative, but they also involve seconded personnel from the member states. The European Union does not have an EU army. Sometimes they involve cooperation with third states. So it may be difficult to identify the legally responsible actor for a human rights violation. Is it the Union, for instance? And if it is the Union, which body within the Union? And this difficulty has very concrete consequences for the point of the individuals, because if they identify their own defendant, their action may fail even before the substance of a case is even examined before the courts. And here, the litigation surrounding EU-Lex Kosovo, again, is a very good illustration. We have a line of cases that shows this difficulty. We can start, first of all, with the L'Italiana case. It is not a case on human rights, it is a case on public procurement, but it is a kind of illustrated for what we are discussing here. In L'Italiana, the action for annulment was dismissed by the court because it had been brought against EU Lex Kosovo itself, the mission, instead of the European Commission. It had to be directed against the Commission because the case concerned actually the EU budget. Later, in a case of 2022, it was a preliminary ruling following a reference made by a Belgian court. The ECJ held that EU Lex Kosovo itself was responsible for claims and obligations relating to the implementation of the mission. Finally, in 2024 and then 2025, in the KSKD case, after the Court of Justice accepted jurisdiction, in principle, the case returned to the General Court. We held the action to be manifestly inadmissible because the applicants had targeted the Commission, the Council, and the European External Action Service instead of EU Lex Kosovo. Are you following here? If you are not following, you can imagine how difficult it is for individuals to identify the proper defendant within the Union in a CSDP-related litigation. So the horizontal attribution of responsibility is very difficult. The vertical attribution of responsibility, that is between the European Union and member states, can also be difficult. It is not easy to determine who can be held legally responsible when we have several actors that contribute to the same operational chain. This can be seen, for instance, in the Mediterranean operations. And there is also an evidentiary dimension. Claimants may face obstacles in obtaining the information necessary to establish responsibility. And this is not a unique problem to the EU missions. We can see it in other contexts. We have recent Frontex litigation, for instance, that has raised similar concerns on how individuals can bear the evidentiary burden in operational contexts. So that's for the first difficulty, attribution of responsibility. The second difficulty concerns the fragmentation of available remedies. As I said previously, access to the Union courts remains limited because of the obstacles that we have in the treaties. So if we take today the EU system of judicial remedies as a whole, the action for damages seems to be the most promising avenue to obtain redress, especially after KS and KD judgment. But at the same time, the conditions for engaging the Union's non-contractual liability are very difficult to be fulfilled. This explains why these actions for damages succeed only in a few cases. So individuals may try to rely on other alternative avenues, and they may bring procedures before the national courts, or even before the European Court of Human Rights after exhausting domestic remedies. And this somehow creates a certain difficulty because we have different courts that may be involved, different standards will apply, and so one national court may accept jurisdiction while another may reject CFSP-related human rights claims. And so here, again, we have examples, practical examples that illustrate this fragmentation. We have, for instance, a case concerning the transfer of a suspected pirate by German forces participating in Operation Atalanta. And the case was brought before the German courts, and a German court accepted jurisdiction and found a violation of the principle of non-refoulement by the German authorities in this case. By contrast, we have another case before the British courts, so-called Tomanovic versus European Union. It is related with the KSKD case because the applicant was one of the applicants in KSKD. And there actually the British courts held that they lacked jurisdiction. So we have a kind of fragmentation of available remedies with also uncertain results. And the last difficulty is the existence of effective redress. As I said before, we may have non-judicial mechanisms in the field of EU missions. When these mechanisms exist, they may recommend remedial measures, but they cannot always award compensation to victims. And here again, the Human Rights Review Panel in Kosovo is a good example. Its mandate is limited to making non-binding recommendations for remedial action, which cannot consist of financial recommendations. And back in 2010, the Venice Commission had criticized actually this point. And that's for the non-judicial mechanisms, but even when a claimant manages to obtain a binding decision from a court, again, the question of enforcement remains somehow problematic. For instance, the union's immunities against enforcement may affect the practical effectiveness of national judgments. So, again, to answer the question, I would say that the challenge today is not the absence of legal principles or accountability mechanisms. The challenge is to deal with these difficulties that individuals have in order to use effectively these mechanisms in practice. And so, ultimately, if EU missions and operations are intended to promote the EU values, including the rule of law abroad, the credibility of this commitment also depends on how the Union deals with these challenges. Thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to
Ms. Angelaki, for always explaining and try to explain these very complex legal frameworks for a better understanding for us. It's always wonderful to have these explanations. I think now we can move now with the following speaker, Mr. Rodriguez, that is hearing us right now, right? So maybe we can start with the opening question for Mr. Rodriguez, if you don't mind. It's regarding to the concept of security. Security is a complex and evolving concept. How has the European Union's understanding and priorities evolved over time, and what role do human rights currently play in the European Union's foreign policy?
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, thank you for the invitation to all of you. And yes, I'm David Rodriguez from University of Deusto, lecturing in security studies. Christian is one of my students. That's why I'm
This
here.
meeting is being recorded.
And yes, I'm happy to be here sharing these ideas with you. Beyond just presenting these slides, I want to ask you and push you to think about it, what kind of world we are living right now. So today we are living in a different world. So the European Union is playing an important role because, yes, we have been watching all these conflicts out there. We have been watching conflicts in the Middle East. We have been watching tensions in Taiwan. We have been watching this war just by our neighborhood, which is Ukraine. So beyond that evolving, I think the European Union is adapting to the new scenarios. And now, yeah, and it's changing all the time because they need to respond. And today, I think the important remark, which is the role played by the European Union, is how the European Union is respecting the international law. It seems to be the only one in this, geopolitical scope. Because it's pushing, it's protecting, and it becomes the guardian of the international law. How the international law will be there, and that implies the respect of human rights. But it's not an easy job. And all this evolution from 2 decades demonstrates that the European Union is trying to adapt. And now we are living in a world with space warfare, with cyber warfare, with hybrid warfare. And what hybrid warfare means is that you need to go through illegal means. And yes, that's hybrid warfare. It's how you can play your game within the gray area. And the gray area means no rules. And that's a challenge for the European Union because Russia, which is one of the threats that we have right there, they are the master of hybrid warfare. And we have to face that hybrid warfare, protecting human rights and respecting international law. That's a dilemma today. And that's what I want to, share with you. Just key concepts. When you just send me these questions, I think about the new realms of warfare. And we in the European Union, we're helping people to, develop strong capabilities and try to use diplomacy as a mechanism to resolve conflicts. But now the European Union is facing a new geopolitical scenario with Russia and the war in Ukraine. And beyond that, we have also another issues like organized crime. See what is happening in Sweden, what is happening in the port of Antwerpen. And those organized crime organizations, which is part of the security Riehl, they are threatening European citizens within our soil, within Europe. So now we need to think about how to contain those threats, but by respecting the rights, the human rights, by being the model for the entire planet, creating these new strategies to contain those threats, but maintaining our principle, the principle of the European Union. That's a challenge, but that's a challenge that you need to think about it, but that will be your master thesis or your PhD thesis. And yes, so it's evolving to adapt. It's evolving to adapt to those, not to mention the land warfare, the naval warfare, and the air force warfare. So we are living in this planet, and we need to understand how to manage these threats, how to contain them, and it's not an easy job. So, but it could be managed by the European Union because you have a lot of rules, and the European Union demonstrates that to manage all those conflicts, they are always proposing ideas and strategies that respect the law and respect the human rights, and human rights are the center of gravity for the European Union strategy. Yes, that's my idea.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rodriguez, for this open beginning, open statement with your contribution. I think we can move now to the following question. Right? Okay, that is thinking. Never mind. We continue with the following question. Is that drawing on the experience of the many common security and defense policy missions conducted over the past decades, we want to know what would you identify as a key lesson learned from these missions? How is the EU refining its strategy to plan and conduct future missions effectively while ensuring consistency with its human rights commitments?
Yes, and linked to the previous question, I will mention another issues in the security realm connected to this question, which is migration. We have another phenomenon which affect security and affect human rights, which is the migration phenomenon, and also the climate change phenomenon. And yes, because we are receiving these flows of migration because they have no other option down there. They are living in a continent with a lot of conflicts, with climate change affecting their lives. So now those are, the triggers of these new conflicts. And what are the lessons learned? What could we do just to help to solve those problems and conflicts by respecting human rights? And it's not just a matter of assistance. It's a matter of helping, working together. The most important lesson learned from these missions out overseas are that we are trying to send a message. We're trying to send our principles. But before we do that, we need to understand what kind of culture, what kind of people, what kind of conflict. We need to understand the nature of this conflict. We need to understand what are they suffering, and by understanding, which is constructivism, and I just asked, and some of you are a student of law and international relations, so here we comes with the theory. So constructivism is the key theory to understand what could we offer to those nations. And yeah, for sure, human rights commitments are in the center, because what can really change things in those countries that we are trying to help is legitimacy. And legitimacy is respecting the rule of law, no matter what kind of government you have. It's respecting the rule of law. That means respecting the populations. So instead of sending people there, sending money there, we need to work together to build capabilities, not just offering money, not just offering technical assistance. It's building with them, let them lead those projects, because when we try to lead, we receive this rejection from the communities, from the population, and that's the lesson learned. And yes, we are spreading the human rights as our model, as within our democracies, but we need to understand, we need to build institutions, because institutions guarantee that they will have the rule of law, and institutions guarantee that they will have institutions to support those human rights. So in the case of, I can mention several cases where we can just realize that by sending technical people, technical assistance, sending money, funds to help some problems, is not just the proper answer. And yeah, and you can see that with these several flows of migration. That means that all these investments sent by the European Union to those countries in Africa, for example, are not working, and human rights are not being respected. So we need to change our EU strategy to help those countries. So more technical people, not just security assistance, more people who improve the conditions of those communities down there. So that's, to me, is the key point today. And to succeed in those missions, we need legitimacy. But today, legitimacy is not out there, because no one is respecting the law, the international law. But that's the power of the European Union. That is the only one. But the other thing that you think about it, you need to think about it, is in order to solve these problems, helping these people, protecting the human rights, we need to be resolute. We need to make things faster. We need to, because they need this assistance just fast. And yeah, we have this bureaucratic system. So we need to speak the procedures to find, the solutions, to send these answers, to send this assistance, to to send to those countries not just the values of protecting human rights, but all that they need. So think about these lessons learned. And yeah, we still have these flows and we still have those problems. Think about the Sahel. The Sahel now is a mess, is under the rule of Al-Qaeda in the Sahel and the Janin and those structures. And they are not respecting human rights. So it's good if we have this message, but it's better if we commit to these people by helping them building institutions. That's my idea.
Thank you very much. I think that maybe now we can start to, or we can open the Q&A session. I think that we are good in time. Right. So in any case, I will give immediately the floor to my colleague Sara Marchis for this moment.
Thank you, Christian, and thank you everyone for being here and for the speaker and the host to be here. So I think we have around 15 minutes for the Q&A session. So I would like to ask you to be as brief as possible so we can give the floor to everyone that wants to talk. I would like to ask you to introduce yourself at the beginning of the question, and I would like also to ask you to address the speaker you want to ask the question. Yes, please.
Hello everyone, my name is Marta Carvalho. I'm a master's student in political science with a background in international relations. First of all, I'd like to thank ASSEDEL and all the speakers for this event. I'm really enjoying it so far. I have a question for Dr. David Rodriguez. I hope you can hear me over the computer. So, as you mentioned that the EU seems to be the only one that's currently respecting international law. And so my question to that is it safe to say that the current institutional frameworks are then obsolete? And if so, what are the prospects for the future of global politics?
That's a great question, and that's a text today. Yeah, that's your master thesis about it. Yeah, it is indeed, because if you just take a look to the international humanitarian law, and yeah, something is happening because no one is respecting it. And why? Because we reached the consensus, but the main actors, the main players in this new arena, they are not signing, they are not committed to this international humanitarian law, and they are not respecting it. So we need different mechanisms, and you need to think about it. And this is my idea, because nowadays to enforce those laws, you are relying on those acts. But yeah, think about it. We are living in a world depending on economy, maybe different kind of sanctions, and maybe different kind of mechanisms to enforce those countries who are not respecting international humanitarian law could help just to stop. Because nowadays when you just mess with the economy, everyone just stop doing what they're doing. See, the Strait of Hormuz. The whole war is, the whole war in the Middle East just stopped because they are affecting the economic, interest. So I think we are living in a different world. That's why I'm not mentioning how we are evolving, but how we are adapting. And the question is, how could we adapt to these new times? Because that's happening. Yes, by, if I get your commitment to respect international humanitarian law, I will fail. But if I block the Strait of Hormuz, I would success in just forcing you to do what you have to do. Stop the war. Think about Israel attacking Lebanon. They are attacking still, but they sometimes, because this economic pressure is, stopping them to commit more attacks. So it's time. And the other part of my answer to you, which is an amazing answer, by the way, amazing question, sorry, not amazing answer. It's that, the international humanitarian law regarding conflicts, because, I want to focus on conflicts. They are behind the events that are happening out there. Now we are thinking about space warfare. And we have the space full of weapons. But we don't have any regulations to control those weapons out there. So we need to speed that. That's why I mentioned that bureaucracy is a problem for us. It's a problem for the international system. Because, yeah, while we are going through all this bureaucracy, someone is sending satellites full of weapons to space. And yes, now hybrid warfare. Even we don't have regulations for cyber warfare or either hybrid warfare. What kind of regulation we have for hybrid warfare, which is the warfare of no rules? It's the gray phenomenon. So yes, we can do that by identifying that. That's why I think about constructivism, beyond realism, beyond liberalism, which are very important. But think about what's happening right now in this planet, and you can create new mechanisms to enforce this respect for human rights and for the international law. Hence, very good question.
Thank you so much.
And I'll present myself real quick. I am Ryan. I have a background, I have a bachelor, in economics, and now I'm studying econometrics and statistics at the Faculty of Strasbourg. My question will be the following. In a world today where we feel like respecting the law is a kind of weakness, we had first the League of Nations, now we have the United Nations, and the first one faded away, and the second one, we feel like it is unfortunately fading away also. So my question will be, if we should fix the United Nations today, how should we do it? And if not, if we want to create maybe a third model of institution or a league, how can we force these powers and these superpowers to not overuse their power towards others? Thank you.
Thank you. Who would like to answer? Professor Angelaki or Professor Rodriguez? Okay.
I have some thoughts. Even though I'm not a specialist in international relations, we definitely have a crisis of the post-World War II system as we know it. We have a crisis of multilateralism. How to solve this problem? For me, I am optimistic by nature, and I think that the European Union has been qualified as a normative power for a reason in the past. And now, for me, this is the moment that the European Union has to stick to this qualification and to defend it internationally. It is the moment that we have to defend the respect of the law and to understand actually internationally the power of the European Union. There is a lot of debate the past years on the so-called strategic autonomy. It started in the framework of the Common Foreign Security Policy, but today we talk about strategic autonomy in many sectors, be it economy, be it the energy, be it the regulation of the internet. So, for me, we have to understand our power. It is not a small power that the European Union has, together, of course, all the member states of the European Union. That's just some thoughts.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to? Oh, thank you. Yes, sure. I think maybe this will be the last question, maybe another one, because we are running out of time. So, okay, I would say not the last question, but we will have another one. Okay, thank you. Please be brief as much as possible.
Yeah, thank you. So my name is Theo. I'm a bachelor's degree in political sciences, and my question is for Dr. Angelika. So you've mentioned that the question is less about whether there are mechanisms for accountability regarding EU missions, and more about whether those mechanisms are really functional. And my question will be the following. So, if you had to give proper guidebook about which conditions or which characteristics should such a mechanism follow to really hold such missions accountable, which would they be? Thank you.
We have a case law of the European Court of Human Rights on the standards, the human law standards that come from Article 6 and Article 13 of the Convention. We have also case law of the Court of Justice. So I would say that if I had to make a kind of guidebook, the proposal would be to manage to have mechanisms independent, impartial, that protect against arbitrariness and that they have the powers to give binding solutions and to provide effective remedies. And if you want, these mechanisms can exist even outside the courts. So for me, it is difficult now maybe to revise the treaties, the EU treaties. It is difficult also to have a further evolution of the case law of the court after the judgment of 2024. Who knows? Maybe we will have. And maybe the court will narrow again the CFSP non-justiciability. But before turning to these kind of radical solutions, the EU institutions, when they prepare the mandates and the decisions to launch EU missions, they may establish non-judicial mechanisms that respect these standards. So it has been in the past an idea to transfer the model of the Human Rights Review Panel to, for instance, to all EU missions, and to create such a body in the framework of every EU mission. So why not rethinking about, first of all, consolidating the functioning, the independent functioning of these mechanisms, and then transferring it to all EU missions? It is legally possible. And if we take the case law of the European Court of Human Rights, we have a case versus HF versus France on foreign terrorist fighters and their families and their repatriation in France. And there the court accepted that in order to protect the right to an effective remedy, it is not necessary to have a judicial mechanism. It may be an alternative accountability mechanism that provides protection against arbitrariness. So it demands a certain legal creativity, but it is possible.
Okay, thank you so much. So we have time for one very brief question and answer if anyone wants to ask. Yes, please.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for the event. It was really interesting. My name is Cecilia, and I have a question for Professor Rodriguez, because I was really interested in your mention of how we need to give leadership, like EU missions need to give leadership to local communities in order to build long-standing and effective institutions. So my question is, what are some other strategies and behaviors that are implemented to ensure that EU missions are not perceived in a paternalistic manner when we actually operate on the field? Thank you.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned, thank you for your questions. Another nice question. What I mentioned is let them make things right and let them do the proper job. And yes, and they need the main role, because we all the time want to show off that we are helping, we are doing this assistance, we are the EU building capabilities, and we need to be within a low profile, because it regards and it depends what kind of assistance and what kind of country or what kind of culture you're trying to tackle or help. So that's the very first advice for you, is to understand. But what kind of mechanisms is those mechanisms are like, just not think about the European Union versus China. When you go down there to Africa, you could find the European Union assistance, and yeah, they are helping, building institutions. They are assisting. They are doing assistance to these communities. The European Union is sending technical people to help those communities to have a better way of life. But if you see China, they build everything. So they build what they really need. They build the port, they build the roads, they are building all the capabilities. So we are helping, but they are doing it. So, and that's, to me, it's a paradox, because yeah, they are receiving a lot of acceptance for the communities, because the communities, they don't want you to go there and teach them how to live, how to protect your rights. They need a structure, the infrastructure, capabilities. So that's why, okay, don't tell me your story. Otherwise, on the other hand, you see the Chinese, they just build what they need, the school. They build the whole school, the whole port, the whole trail system, the whole... So they accept that assistance because they are really improving the quality of life. I don't know if you understand and get what I'm trying to say. So it's not just messages and nice speeches. It's let them lead all this transformation, build those institutions, and and trying to compete with other actors and understand other actors, how they are, performing in those countries. And that's happening in Latin America. In Latin America, the Chinese, they are building everything, ports, and so the communities accept those because they see the port, they see the school, they see the road, they see the train, they see everything. And and they just say thanks. They don't want more speeches, they want action. Thank you.
I think we can close the Q&A session. I would like to applaud this event.
First of all, a huge thank you to MEP Catarina Vieira for being with us today and for supporting this event. This is the second time she hosted an event with our association, so we are really grateful for her support. And we would also like to thank Noor and Lydia for their help in the organization of this event. Also, of course, our sincere thanks to MEP Nela, Dr. Angelaki, and Dr. Rodriguez for their insightful contribution and for the time they have dedicated to us today. So today's discussion highlighted the many security challenges the European Union faces today, while human rights, the rule of law and accountability remained at the heart of EU missions. Balancing these values with security objectives is a difficult task. The discussion also showed that further efforts are still needed to strengthen existing mechanisms and ensure that these principles are effectively applied in practice. And finally, we would like to thank all the participants who joined us today. And just a quick reminder that we are also organizing a training session this afternoon from 1:30 p.m. to 3 p.m.
the training session will be about the European legislative process with MEP Saidi. And the session will be in French, and so for those who are interested in attending, the meeting point is at the Flower Bar.
Just to conclude, ASSEDEL has prepared some gifts for our speaker and co-host, so I can give him now this customized mask.
Oh, so
thank
nice.
you,
Very
Professor Angelaki.
Excited with the name
Professor
too.
Rodriguez, we hope we will be able to give your mark at some point. Maybe Christian will bring it over when he will come back to Spain. And just last thing, as we said, we are ASSEDEL, we organize events, etc. And so don't forget to follow our social media. We are on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, everywhere. So please stay tuned so you can know what we do next. And see you later for the training session. And we hope you will be there. Okay, so bye, thank you.